And sorry, what is your first name again?
Alex.
Alex. Okay, because I'm going to be referring to you by your first name a lot today. So better get it right from the get-go.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to say is
I call you Gene.
Yeah, you call me Gene, whatever.
The entire time.
Yeah, I'm too polite to correct people on that kind of thing as well. So
great.
Let's make sure that. Right, I should be in focus.
So is this broadcasting live, or are you going to?
No. So I never want to kind of put people in that situation. I nearly had a mishap at work at what I do normally with a live stream yesterday, and I was talking about sex in movies for 8.5 minutes live. So, and then it was live online for 20 minutes, and there was a few saucy comments about certain things, and I was like, oh my God, it's like 13 people watched it. Did anyone record the YouTube clip? Hopefully not.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I know it could have been really dicey, especially if you make comments on certain people, then you get the chop, you know what I mean? So,
well, I'll try and keep the expletives to a minimum.
Oh, no. That's basically the forum's open to say whatever you like, really.
Great. Okay.
It's the only time anything's caught is if you expressly make that choice. That's not a problem by me. And you can hide that easily with a cut between me or you. So, and we had a 10-year-old on, I think it was the third week with a dad, and she was talking about her animation called Superhero, and she did a stop motion animation, and she lost 10 hours work. It was like it was all within the app. So when you're relying on a sandboxed app, it's not so hot sometimes. Or it's like with filming, backing things up, because I just get paranoid about all of that,
Yeah. I always try to back up my work to the cloud. So
yeah, I have two separate backups of pretty much everything for the last 15 years. I go through it, and my Final Cut Pro 6 apps projects, like Twitch, when you open them on a legacy machine, so that it's as though they've degraded when they shouldn't. It's not a JPEG. So
yeah.
So thank you very much, Mark, for being on.
My pleasure.
In my Zoom meeting notes, I've got you down as Ray. I'm like, why have I saved you as Ray?
Interesting.
And then I was trying to work out who have I. Right, let's look at the schedule on the emails, and then right, it's Mark. Fantastic, yeah. So yeah, it's one of those typical moments of mine. And as this is kind of grown and grown in terms of the amount of people that have been on it and the amount of submissions have arrived. So we've got, I think it's over 30 now. And for a festival that's literally just grown out of the start of this, it's interesting. We've had submissions from Australia, just had one from Israel for the first time. And then Canada, US, UK, France, Germany. And it's been a real mix. And what I like about yours is, this is what I've spoken to Danielle about a little bit as well, is each of the films have real personality, that's in good writing as well, has a little bit of the person in the writing. And like stand-up comedians are the same, aren't they?
Yeah, it's, it was an opportunity for me to, we're put in this unnatural situation, and David Lynch once wrote something that creativity comes from limitation. So it's like, well, what do I have? How can I possibly make a movie? I have an actor, I have a house, I have a backyard, I have an iPhone. I can't make a movie. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me just try to do something with what I have. And the limitations actually, created inventiveness. Okay, let me try and write a story. What is a story I could write in this place? And I, write something that's very close to my own personality. I'm a writer, and what is something kooky and creepy that could happen to a solitary writer who has writer's block and no inspiration? And it sort of grew from there. And and I've never been a director before. I've been a screenwriter, and I've been an actor, and I've produced films, but I've always been afraid of directing. I always thought it was this big mysterious thing. And then I said, well, I'm going to try directing and just see how it comes out. And it's been a really great experience. I was surprised that, given my limitations, it's actually a piece that I'm pretty proud of. So I just want to keep going in that direction. and telling stories like that. So
Now, is that something you'd kind of like look to do again? I take it.
well, as a result of this, I've decided that this is going to be a web series now, and I've already made an episode 2 of it. I saw it, and it's sort of a definitive ending. It's like, oh well, that character is dead, and I was thinking, or is he? Like, what could possibly happen after that, and what would be the next step of happening to this character if he doesn't get erased to another dimension, or even if he did, what would that look like? So I really enjoyed playing this character, and I wrote a second episode, and now in my head I've got an arc for at least 12 episodes, and I'm going to try and shoot 2 a month. And I've shot the second one, and it's great. And yeah,
we will absolutely share that out. And we've spoken to a few filmmakers. I'm not sure if you know Ian Rayburn, and he's got a few horror. I love horror, and I noticed your comics on mounted on the wall, and that's the kind of thing I dig a lot. And with yours, I love the kind of music choices you made, because I love Carpenter, John Carpenter. I love his stuff. And
yeah, 100%. Like there's so much, and I don't even want to give these secrets away, but this is a filmmaking podcast, so I will. I just went to freesound.org, which has just got loads of sound effects people and composers who just want their music to be used. And I was like, some of this stuff is dynamite. And it just added so much character and personality to what would just be not boring, but just a pretty vanilla story. But the music informs so much of what's going on. It just fit with my story that, yeah. So, and yes, John Carpenter is absolutely one of my heroes. Sam Raimi as well. My favorite horror film of all time is actually The Shining, because I love the theme of a writer going crazy in isolation. So I just sort of I didn't expand on that, but that's kind of the story I told here. So
yeah, and I loved your maniacal laugh in the film as well.
Thank you very much.
It worked to treat that, and it really did creep me out. I won't spoil it, but the ending, it really did creep me out.
I'm glad that worked. Yeah.
And in a way,
to talk my wife into doing that.
I was wondering who it was. Of course, it has to be someone in the house, and that,
Yeah.
So it with what's his name, Shutter Kane in The Mouth of Madness. Sam Neill's character. There's a really nice kind of foreboding in your film, and obviously it's enhanced by your writing and the music. And
that's a good comparison. I love that movie, and it's actually it's one of those dark horse picks from John Carpenter. But
it's really underrated as well. Really underrated.
Yeah. Very Lovecraftian, but
exactly. Yeah, a lot of his stuff is underrated, and everyone's referencing They Live Now. It's one of my personal favorites. And I thought about doing a horror podcast. I don't know. I'm not looking to be a YouTuber in any way. I just want to kind of put people's content out there. And a Italian artist, an 18-year-old from Milan, they've created a piece of art for this podcast, and it looks like some sort of Lovecraft thing, but with my face on it. And I'm so happy with it. And I said to them, anything you design, we're going to kind of push your content and celebrate you as well, because the fact you're doing a piece of design for free, and they're only 18 years old, is astounding to me. And it's kind of inspired me to do a horror-based podcast, but I'm not sure what form that would take, because it would mainly be 80s and horror. So, and I like
which is really the golden age, yeah.
Yeah, I really like the idea of limiting yourself to, the end of the 70s to beginning of 90s. That's your pool. It's not like a review show where you've got an infinite amount of possibilities. And there'll be recommendations. Like I was recommended, what was it called? Chopping Mall. And it was I've seen that.
I've only seen the first little bit. I was at a horror festival last year, and I met the starlet, who's in her 50s right now, from Chopping Mall. And I was like, oh, cool. And I was embarrassed because I haven't seen the movie. And I also met Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp, which was a dream. So.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
But Chopping Mall is it's there's so many like gems from that period that I still haven't seen. So that's but I hear that's one of the classics. So.
Like my when you unearth a gem, it's a real treat. And
Hmm.
one that I have been putting off for a while because it's the last of Carpenter's films I've not seen. I bought Elvis on Blu-ray, and it has Kurt Russell. I don't think it has a commentary by the two of them, which is disappointing because their commentaries are astounding, especially The Thing. And obviously, it's a biopic. It's a TV movie. I watched the first couple of minutes, and it was like watching the Goonies commentary. I didn't want to watch it because I didn't want it to end. You know what I mean? That kind of relationship you have with the content. And I'm gonna do it. I've got a week off, so I'm gonna stick that on and probably have a bit of a horror fest, and that'll give me nightmares again. You know. So.
Sorry, it's a horror film about
No,
Elvis?
sorry. Yeah, I'm just kind of spiraling a little bit. So
Okay.
it's an Elvis biopic and with Kurt
Okay.
Russell, and it was
Oh,
one of
interesting.
his TV movie, but he released on Blu-ray, and it
Huh.
looks fantastic, and Kurt Russell's rocking as always.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I kind of stopped it. And think, right, I need to be in the right frame of mind. I want to really enjoy this, you know. So,
Yeah.
and it looks wide of the mark compared to Ghosts of Mars. So, you know.
And Vampires is the other. That's the other John Carpenter one. I think is a misfire. I wasn't a big fan of.
There's a moment in that effects wise where the main vampire opens the motel room door, or the motel room door gets opened for him, and he splits this guy in half. He puts his hand in his chest and just splits him right down the middle. I was like, yeah, this is great. It's not a
That's
great
fun.
film, but it's like, yeah.
The one thing that stuck out for me is that they had James Woods doing the classic walking away from the explosion in slow motion, and he noticeably flinches when it explodes. It's like, oh, they had one take. He's like, oh crap, that's the one thing he's
That's
not
the
supposed
budget
to
gone.
do.
Yeah, I think he's
It's
lighting
like,
it. He's trying to light a
oh, can we do
cigarette as
that one
well.
again? It's like, no, we need another house to blow up. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, there must be like a one take deal in some films, like From Dusk Till Dawn. There's the petrol station, the gas station.
Mhm.
It's like on fire, then it explodes, and they walk away. So sometimes it like that was a relatively low budget film. Well, not too low, but they must have a one take deal. Something like Tony Scott. When you look at a Tony Scott film, and he has these giant explosions. Then there's sometimes, there's got to be a one-shot deal, isn't there?
Yeah, and so it's a lot of white knuckle and praying and just double checking everything before, because you only got one shot. So I'm sure there's a lot of cameras, a lot of angles, but yeah, that just must be terrifying,
Yeah.
especially if you have actors, because if an actor screws up his line during that, explosions are kind of predictable, but actors are, oh, I just wasn't in the moment there. Can I do that again?
Yeah, also, or they have to replace it with some really bad ADR, try and
Oh boy.
match it. Yeah. So yeah. So if I was going to ask you about what are your kind of influences for your film? Obviously, we've highlighted Carpenter and what you're a fan
Mm-hmm.
of. How did that process start, and when did you initially have the idea for your film?
Well, I've actually I love the title, and I've tried to write a story about a writer going mad, and I've got about 7 different versions of it. None of them that have ever been filmed, but I love A Wicked Muse, and I like the idea of a writer who's searching for the great idea, and then he delves into supernatural. So I had to do a shortened version of this one, and I don't know if I sent you the 3-minute version or I have a 5-minute version. It's a little
I
bit
think you sent me the
longer.
3. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll eventually re-release the full 5-minute version and the later episodes, but it's that one's a very sort of tight one. But ultimately, it's the idea that he's desperate and he tries something supernatural. And the story that picks up in the 3-minute version is, it's after he's done it, and then this is a new version of himself who's discovering that he's made some sort of a pact. And I keep it very minimalistic. We only got 3 minutes, so I do a very trimmed down version of it, but in the web series I'll expand it into something bigger. So this is a theme I've always been interested in. And another theme, I love 1970s horror comics. I've got a huge collection of them, and it's like House of Mystery, Tales from the Crypt, all of that stuff. Like, the stuff that Marvel and DC did in the 70s actually is, and, Tomb of Dracula. I've got a big collection of all of those. And I just kind of like the really short, schlocky horror stories, it's simple. A person is greedy or desperate. He takes a shortcut in the form of the supernatural, and then he gets fucked over because there are no shortcuts in life. It's the same story you can tell over and over and over again, but in so many different ways. And it's short and it's cheesy, and I love them. Like a little bit like Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt.
Oh, absolutely.
And I felt that I created this one story, but now I kind of realize I'm going to expand on it in a web series, and it's a kind of a good format that, through various legacy media, maybe there's a haunted VHS or a haunted comic book he finds, or a vinyl record, different ways that spirits or messages can come to him, and different creepy things that can happen within his house. And eventually it might expand beyond the house, but I want to try to tell as many kooky, creepy stories for this guy.
I love that. I absolutely love that. When I watched your film again this morning, it actually spent kind of created an idea in my mind, and I thought, that something like that would be really interesting. But in terms of a point of view of someone obsessed with time travel, now obviously time travel can be done really simply, or it can be super complex with what you show on screen, how it's written, and he becomes obsessed with it, and he figures out. I'll tell you the idea. I don't mind sharing it with you.
Sure, yeah.
He figures out how to do it, but I don't know how the information gets to him. He figures out the only problem with the time travel is you can go back or forward any way you want, and you can continue to travel. But the point in space, the point on Earth where you would arrive, you don't know. So you could end up in the middle of a wall or in the middle of the sea under the water. And then the idea was, if I shot it here, because the garages this is an old army base, so it sounds like something from a horror film already.
Wow.
So across the way, these used to be officer houses. So across the way is our garage. It's separate to the house. It's not like part of it. And so he goes forward in time. He figures it out. And then he's inside the garage. It's completely locked. And the rest of the street is empty. It's been abandoned. So he's stuck in the garage, and that's how he ends up. He can't get out. He can't do anything. That's him screwed. So I just thought, when I watched your film, I thought, I love the kind of mood. This is what I like about horror, is the atmosphere and mood and how it makes you feel. Yeah. And if a film can make you, like, if it can bring out an emotion, obviously a jump or whatever, that's really my jam. And when I watched your film, I thought, that'd be really fun to do something like that. And then it was, he just appeared in the garage. He woke up in darkness, and he just had probably his phone with him. And then he looks around and he realized he can't get out. He's screwed. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's a filmable idea. I actually like that. So, I mean, if it's filmable, it's I might come knocking on your door and see if you can tell that story. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you did it as an episode, I'd be interested to see how you get out of that as well. That'd be quite an interesting writing challenge.
Yeah. But who knows? Maybe in this guy's universe, maybe he, maybe he doesn't have to. Maybe there's 150 deaths for this guy, and then he just keeps. I don't know yet, so we'll see.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated. It's really nice to hear that you're kind of going choosing to expand on the idea. Like, even the kind of, I don't know. Sometimes music just works so well. Mm-hmm. When you watch Once Upon a Time in the West, the music was written, I think it was 3 months before the film was made. And the fact that when I don't know if Leone kind of created sequences and moments based on the music, but when I looked at when your character goes out the door and those shot choices and that, I think it just worked really well. Thank
you. Wow.
And it was just really good fun. Like, where is this? Where's this thing? And all of that, So I wanted to actually have it buried in the ground, but then I was like, the timing wise is not going to work. But I might do that in a future episode, because I think there's something really haunting about a person with a shovel digging in the earth,
for the next clue, or there's something ghoulish about that, and visually I like it, but just couldn't do it in the time frame for this. But
yeah, like that sequence in The Burbs where Tom Hanks is looking out the window and he sees the people digging in the back garden, the Klopex. There's something really it's just pure evil. It looks like evil, doesn't it? So
interesting. Yeah.
If you can if you expand on a couple of the ideas or moments in your film in the series, I'd love to see that.
Well, I would like to keep you. I would like to keep you in the loop, and I actually I haven't announced this publicly anywhere, but I might as well give this announcement on your show regarding A Wicked Muse. Not only is it going to be a web series, but I am going to structure the web series in episodes that are very much like Bandersnatch. Like, I know it's a trademark term, but like choose your own adventure type thing, or choose your own path. So we're going to do a couple of episodes. Clever. And then, like there's going to be a scene, for instance, in the house where he hears a noise in one door, but in the other door, there's like, it's got this sort of corona about it, or fire or flames. And the audience says, well, which door is he going to go into? And the adventure is different for them. So that's sort of my big master plan. And I've got a background in software development, so I'm going to build kind of a platform that's going to handle that type of story. And I want to get it out there I figure this could generate some buzz on, other horror websites. I was like, hey, this is a cool idea. Check this out. Other than just here's a web series. Here's a game you can play with and so that's my approach. Yeah.
Yeah, super. It kind of for some reason it's reminded me of there was an X-Files game years ago.
Oh yeah.
And it was like 8 discs, 8 CDs or something in the late 90s. I think it was late 90s, and maybe just after that. And it wasn't like choose your own adventure, like those fantastic books, those fantasy books. Because I've got some Indiana Jones books like that as well that choose your own adventure.
I had those too. Those were awesome.
Yeah, and I've got those somewhere. And I always loved that, and the fact that you're doing that in film form, that'll generate buzz, and it's quite
there's exciting. A niche community out there that loves that. I don't know, you're from the UK, so I guess you've probably heard of fighting fantasy books. We're a big thing in the UK. Yeah, I got a huge collection of that stuff too. I'm a huge nerd for that stuff, so that's sort of what I grew up with more so. But I love that. And this is going to be sort of rudimentary. It's not going to be super complex, but just enough of a path that there might be 6 or 7 times you could replay this series. I'll do a season of 12 episodes that can be played 6 or 7 times, and then hopefully get people excited for season 2. And it's not a problem. It's a writing task as well, because you want just enough development so it is different enough. You know what I mean? That's a challenge, but I'm up for it. But that's where I am right now. So
what would be really
let's see if I can do that. Yeah,
because you could have crossovers. You could, if you see yourself doing the other things as a character. So there's a lot of scope there. It can be that could be so.
You're thinking the same stuff. Yeah, there's a lot
so
that
complex.
Can be done,
but,
But I mean, I've got all this time. As long as COVID's around, I might as well use it to create something. So that's the plan right now. So I'm excited about it. But so far, it's early in the game. I've got 2 episodes, and I've got a 3rd one written that I'm going to start shooting basically this weekend. So it's
superb.
It takes me about 5 days to shoot one. So it was kind of a lot of fun. So.
Do you think that amount of time will come down based on the new experience now?
Well, it'll probably go up, if anything, because with my new experience, the first 2 episodes are pretty rudimentary, but I've been teaching myself Adobe After Effects and how to do. I want to grow my craft and get more intricate and create more cool moments. So like if I can have somebody's hand get set on fire, or just any way that I can add 1 or 2 special moments VFX wise, I'd like to maybe even invest in some equipment if my wife will let me, a few, like some sound equipment, lighting equipment. Ideally, I want to raise the production value on subsequent episodes. So yes, I'm getting better, but I'm also going to raise the bar as far as production value. And I think the first 2 episodes turned out pretty good considering it was shot with an iPhone, no sound equipment, and very minimal lighting. So, but I want to get better because you know, I think if I want to build an audience and get people excited, audiences are going to demand more. So
yeah, I think even though you kept it super simple with the iPhone, I think that was one of the things we pushed for when we started the festival, was use what you've got. You know, some
yeah,
people they have all the equipment in the world, others have an iPhone, and the idea is just as strong. So we had a chap that I interviewed yesterday, Chandru. It was a film he made with his 2 children. He's an actor and based in London, and it was it's a film called The Castle. You'll get to see that some point soon, and it's 2 inner monologues of the children arguing over this plastic castle, and it was such a simple idea. It doesn't matter what you shoot on if you've got a strong story, because you know story is king.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
If you've got that, it was so funny as well. You've got these 2 fighting children, but they're fighting through their mind, not like a science fiction thing, but very, very clever. But yeah, just one comment on your lighting is that you don't necessarily have to have it complex. What I liked about your character at the beginning is that the lighting is completely different in that room to the rest of the setting. So when he steps out, you've got that nice light from the doorway. You've got the almost like Blair Witch effect in the back garden or the backyard or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of really stark and on his own in his writing room. So I think that worked really well. So sometimes you can kind of overthink things, but I totally respect you wanting to kind of step up your production value. Definitely.
Yeah, I don't want to go. I absolutely don't want to go crazy. But basically, you know, one of the production things, I want a Bluetooth lav mic so I can take shots that are farther away from me down the hall, and they can capture me talking like I'm next to you. Just little things like that. But I've made a bunch of short films in the past 4 years, and some of them I paid out of pocket, big budgets. Like I made a short film that was 15 minutes. It cost me $20,000, and I had a great cast and crew, and you know, I'm acting in it, but you know, and it looks great, but not, you know. Now I realize throwing money at production, having tons of gear, isn't as important as stories. If you have a good essential story, if you have something that draws people in, you can make the audience wait and watch somebody typing at a keyboard. You can build anticipation with music, and you can draw them in, and they'll be riveted. And then you can do a really crazy high-speed car chase that costs billions of dollars, and I can be yawning and falling asleep because it's not motivated. You know?
I totally agree. I'll give you 2 examples where that's a really good point. Well, in my case, is I watched what was it, 6 Underground? It was Michael Bay's Netflix film with Ryan Reynolds. I was really bored all the way through. Like honestly, this sounds terrible. It felt like a big step down. The action was insane, but I was just like, oh, right, I've seen this before. It's nothing new. Then I watched Extraction recently with Chris Hemsworth, and it was super original. It was a first-time director of a feature film, and it was just like, wow, this is fantastic. And another point you make, this is a huge film, but you know, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, with James Mason, Kirk Douglas, and there's a few other good big actors in it as well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And first time I ever watched it, it was on Disney Plus on a trial basis. So I thought, oh, I'll stick that. I've always heard about it. I loved it. But what I realized is they got such tight sets. They were super, super efficient with the cinematography. So what they did was they had a wide, because I'm trying to shoot anamorphic because I've got some anamorphic gear. And they shoot a wide shot. Everything goes on. Obviously, the story and the performances are superb. And then there's a moment where it's so important, where it's there's a close up. So it's informed something I did for work, where it's just keeping it simple. Because if you try and overcomplicate things, sometimes it kind of pulls away from what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's and horror, I think you can not get away with, but you can put anything on screen, and if the story's good, people will be like, yeah, this is fantastic.
Well, in horror, it's what's scariest is what you don't see quite often, and it's sound that is scary, you know, and that can build so much of the mood and anticipation. And yeah, and I think that's kind of what I love about it. So yeah, it's I'm just, I don't know, this has been a really eye-opening experience for me creating it. Just, you know, just believing I had a simple story, and that, wow, it is compelling and people do respond to it, and just makes me want to tell more stories. And yes, you can, whereas I find big budget, there are some wonderful big budget movies, but for the most part, it's built like, okay, what do people want? Well, people like explosions, people like special effects, they like big stars, and so it's like a checklist. Let's get them all in there. Let's make it the best quality, best lighting. And what's, you know, and of course it has to have the best script, and the script has to have all of these elements, but everything is sort of Frankenstein together, and it kind of loses a singular vision. So sometimes there is nothing more compelling than a storyteller sitting around a campfire, slowly telling a story to the people around them and drawing them in. And that's the first kind of storytelling, you know, us as cave people sitting around the story, and one guy taking his time telling a story, because those people aren't going anywhere. They're listening. You know, you draw them in, and you know, they didn't have Ryan Reynolds back in those days. They didn't have CGI, or they didn't have, you know, volcanoes and well, they had volcanoes, but no big explosions. And so yeah, I think if you know, I think if a lot of storytellers would stick to that and just tell a story and believe in it, you know, that's kind of what I hope to do. But someday I would like one of those multi-million-dollar budgets. So
Yeah, that'd be nice. And turn this
yeah,
web series into something gigantic.
yeah. Well, I am. I'll plug one more thing. I am working on I've been working on trying to get a feature made for about 2 years. My latest feature script, knock on wood, is poised, and it looks like it's going to get funding. I don't want to give away the title yet,
No,
but
please don't.
I will touch upon something you said earlier. Think the burbs a little bit. So think about a suburban family, the desire for excess and having the perfect suburban life. And on the surface, this family seems to have it all. But as I hinted at before, because I'm interested in these kinds of stories, you know, everything has a cost. What is this family's dark secret that allows them to have it all? To have the perfect kitchen, the perfect kids, the great job. How do they keep this glossy sheen of idyllic suburban life? And we're going to find out, of course, that there's a nefarious secret behind that. So this script has gotten a lot of attention. It looks like it's going to get under $1 million, but it's still a significant budget with me playing the lead character. So hopefully this gets made. I'm probably going to find out more within 2 months, but there's quite a bit of interest, and I'm feeling good about this being my first feature. So yeah.
That's great. That's really great. And you know, it's you want to keep as much. You know, if are you gonna try and be a producer on it, or do you kind of hand off the idea? Is because that's when you have a great idea, especially in your experience of being a writer, it must be very difficult to kind of hand that over. You know, when you've
I've been through that process before. Like I had an idea for a horror anthology series, and got very close to getting made, and it was actually pitched to Universal in California, and like, you know, a bunch at high levels. It didn't end up getting picked up, but I went that route, and you know, it was very great. It was a great learning experience, but there was just too many hands in it, and it got turned into something that was far from that. This time, I ended up partnering up with a production company that really believes in me and really believes in the script. But I don't care, as long as there's only two things that matter to me. One, that it gets made with me as the screenwriter, and two, that I play the lead role, because I consider myself an actor first and foremost. I love it, but people tell me I'm a wonderful writer, so I keep doing that. But so it's important. The only, you know, I'm willing to let them take over as much of the creative as they want, as long as they keep the basic idea of my script together, and I get to play the lead role. Other than that, you know, I trust them, but you know, other than that, I'd like I just want it to get made. Later on in my career, I can be like, David Lynch and demand total creative control, but even he had to work up to that. He didn't have complete
Absolutely,
creative
yeah.
control on his films until like, after Dune, he could start calling shots a bit more. But
thinking about what period of comics did you say you really loved, or horror comics?
Like 1970s horror comics, for the most part, is the big part of my collection. So 70s and a little bit of the 80s, which was, yeah.
If you were asked to adapt one of them or a particular story, have you got one in mind that you would love to kind of to work on?
That's a tough one. Let me think. One honestly is not jumping out to me, but no, I wish I had an answer to that one.
I know that's a
It's
tricky
just
one
sort
when
of
you love it so much. Yeah.
And they're all very. I mean, they're all quite similar in that it's just some guy. Just it's all about materialism. He wants something very, very this worldly, and he wants it now, or and it's all about greed, and then he takes a shortcut, and then he gets his karma. So
I'll give you an
Go ahead.
example of I'm not a writer in any way, and someone I borrowed a comic of someone. I think it was almost 20 years ago, and I was obsessed with a short story in it. And it's set in the near future, and it's about a production company and a new actress that comes to work on a feature film. And the contracts are like the golden age of cinema, where you sign up for a huge amount of films, you can't go to any other studio. And now it's completely different to that now. And she meets I'll tell you a broken version of what I remember. She meets an older woman in the waiting room, and she's really kind of disfigured, and she feels sorry for her. She talks to her for a while, and she just kind of forgets that. She signs up to this movie deal and says, "Oh, we've got a new technique now. We do a 3D scan of you, we record your voice, and we kind of, that's it. We don't need you on set. We create a version of a film with actors from all over the world, and we don't have sets. Everything's virtual." And then a week later, she gets picked up, or the studio come to her house and pick her up, saying, "Oh, it's time for your surgery." I said, "What do you mean your surgery?" "Well, we own the rights to you now, and you don't own your own face. So we need to change everything about you." And that old woman was a huge movie. The one she met in reception was a movie star that was kept on retainer in the studio, but she'd been changed, her
Altered.
face and body, exactly, voice, the way, her gait, the way she walks, everything. And the same thing happened to this lady at the end. And when I read that, I was like, that'd be a fantastic film,
Oh, that's a cool story. Yeah, I like that. And
it's
not, it's not too far from reality in some ways, because the old studio system practically owned their stars, and it's sort of it's like a further take on that, So yeah, I love that.
exactly,
That's
yeah.
really cool.
And I was talking to another filmmaker a couple of days ago, and I said, we were talking about, what would we like to remake? And I said, I've got one in mind, and I don't mind it if I didn't get to make it, as long as someone else did. I love Capricorn 1, but it'd be so well made now in terms of, have you seen it?
Is that the Battlestar Galactica spinoff?
No, it's
Or I'm thinking Caprica. Okay,
yeah.
Capricorn 1, I don't know. I haven't seen it.
I love that as well. Yeah, Capricorn 1 is with Elliot Gould, O.J. Simpson, James Brolin, and there's Boyd Halbrook as well. Is it Boyd Halbrook? That's the dad, isn't it? I think it's Boyd Halbrook. Yeah, and it's about a manned mission to Mars, and they put the three astronauts, and O.J. Simpson's one of them, and they're just about to take off. And the world's watching. You've got those galleries of people on bleachers watching the rocket just about to take off. Plus, a group of security come to the rocket and say, "You've got to come off." So what? They take them away. The rocket takes off and seemingly goes into space. But it's explained to the astronauts that we don't have the money to go to Mars. It's a marketing campaign. So we're actually going to do a fake. We're going to fake it. And we need to record your voices about you being on the planet, and then we'll send all that information back. And basically the Earth thinks they've gone to Mars, but a piece of the technology in the film, it keeps the heart rate of one of the astronauts fails. So it gives the reading to the press worldwide saying one of the astronauts has died, but they've kept the real astronauts in a place in the middle of Vegas or the middle of the desert. So what do they do with the astronauts? Because the machine monitoring their health is failing. So all of them are eventually going to have to be.
We got to keep the illusion. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a terrifying story. It has that kind of sinister Westworld vibe to it.
Yeah.
You should seek that. Elliot Gould's like a news reporter. But yeah,
cool.
That's a cracking one.
And that's actually very, I mean, like stuff about, government lying is, I mean, it's always been pertinent in film, but especially right now, there's a real flavor. No, flavor's the wrong word. There's a real zeitgeist or a hunger for that type of stuff. So, yeah, that's actually, that's a pretty great story. So
yeah,
I love stuff like that.
So I just bounced an idea off you. This is completely different. So I was thinking of my horror podcast. There was a series in the UK called Dr. Terror Presents, and it was it's the actor. This is a reach. It's the actor that plays Peter Cushing in Rogue One. So he did the performance and then they did the CG work over his face. He's a very popular UK actor. And he's kind of RADA and all of that. And he played this demon called Dr. Terror. And the show would be on at 1 o'clock in the morning here. And he would present horror films. And there's an American guy in the US that wears a cowboy outfit, something driving, and he presents horror films. Yeah.
Joe Bob Briggs.
That's it, yeah.
I met him once, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So great. I'm glad you know him. So I wanted to do a series, not presenting, but a podcast. And I was going to be, I've got the suit for it. I've got the mask for it randomly. But it's one of the aliens from They Live, with all the veins and everything.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I'm just kind of playing around with the idea of doing the podcast, pre-recording the audio, because obviously through the mask it wouldn't work, and then layering it over the top and kind of acting out the podcast. So I'm just kind of playing with that at the moment. I really want to do it, but it's working out. Does the idea work? So.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a great idea, and I was thinking of doing something similar. Because I do a decent Vincent Price impression, some people say, and I was thinking of doing a character like that. And there's a wealth. There's so many indie horror filmmakers, especially now, because horror lends itself to filmmaking. It's it just uses the medium in such a great way to tell simple stories. So and you could find, so instead of even just showing whole movies, if you wanted to show the best 30 seconds of a short film done by these horror, just say, send me your best 30 seconds and I'll include it on my podcast, and then I'll talk about it afterwards. And I don't know. I think it'd be a great idea for you to do. And
that's a really refreshing way to do that, actually, rather than talking about things that people have already kind of gone over 1,000 times.
Yeah, like show off new and up and coming horror filmmakers, and I know plenty who'd love to send content your way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I know another horror filmmaker. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to a couple of chaps this week, and his influences, you could see Roger Corman all over his films, in terms of close-ups, drills going into skulls, all that kind of thing. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice idea. If I'll probably consult with you on that about that a little bit further, because I wouldn't want to rehash anything like I said earlier, because there's so many reviews. I don't want it to be a review show. Well, I do this thing every lunchtime on my Instagram feed where I just review a film or something I like, and it seems that the darker horror stuff is more popular in terms of views. I always post at the same time and use the similar hashtags, but I think it's just more engaging sometimes, and that's my jam. Horror generally. But
there's a built-in audience for horror. There's people who will watch a horror movie even if it's a bad one because they love the genre. So the industry is starting to wake up to that indie horror is viable. Like, nobody's going to get rich, but I could potentially make a living doing this stuff, which is my goal. So
Like,
yeah, I'd say
yeah, Jason Blum has kind of nailed it with like higher budgets, what, $7 million or whatever it is,
mhm.
but giving the right people the tools to make what they want. And obviously, I've talked about this before, but with The Mummy, that was a big misstep for the Universal brand. And then they built this whole thing that was going to this dark universe. It never, never really did well. And I think it barely broke even, the film.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I like the idea, but it just didn't work. I was hoping for the best from that project, but it just didn't work. And yeah, it's a valuable lesson. I like blockbusters too. It's just, there's a right way of doing it and a wrong way. So
yeah, but there's a few blockbusters that have got some flack, and they weren't popular, but I don't see, like, I loved John Carter. I thought John Carter was really good, and
really, yeah.
I quite enjoyed The Lone Ranger. And there's something about the two films. It's not that I was a big Johnny Depp fan with The Lone Ranger, but there's just elements of those films that I really enjoyed. And then marketing can be a big killer of films as well, especially when an audience can get betrayed by the marketing, and then word of mouth can pass over really quickly about, oh, this isn't what you were sold on.
Well, I haven't seen either of those two, but I was actually curious about both of them, because anytime there's something like that people, like the audience universally pans, I always sort of question that. I think, well, there's got to be something there. And I like that those two, they harken back to the old pulp magazines of, turn of the century, and like that kind of nostalgia. Like there's a reason that was popular in the times of radio plays, like The Lone Ranger and John Carter of Mars, which was Edgar Rice Burroughs, who was popular at the time of. I like those old stories as they were told in comic books, and I feel that there's got to be a good idea for a movie. I don't know, maybe it just missed with audiences today, because I don't think kids growing up, we didn't grow up with the Lone Ranger or John Carter. We don't know who the heck they are, and we're not invested in going to see a new character. That's why people want to bank on stuff that's already, like Star Wars is safer. We're already invested in that universe. And same thing, the Marvel universe, we're invested there. And trying to create a new universe is, it's too much of a gamble. Maybe they should have started making a $10 million movie for both and really knocking it out of the park. But yeah, I'd like to see those. That's actually cool.
Yeah, John Carter was a lot of fun, and I thought the performances were good, and like with The Invisible Man, I don't know if you've seen that, the newest one.
Oh, I hear it's great, but I haven't seen it yet.
Very good. It's very, very good. And like you say, you start off with I think that was $7 million for that film, and it was like they really like kind of squeeze out the money in that film. It's just like, wow. Like there's a location, the house where effectively where the Invisible Man is living with his wife, and the house they chose a location scouting. Bravo to them, because it made certain scenes. Because I was thinking, is this set? And then I looked it up online. It's pretty much all location. I was so impressed by that.
Wow,
And that kind of makes sense that it's location based, because with a set, it's costly to build, isn't it? So I would highly recommend that. The techniques or the cinematography sells the film, because there's certain moments like a bed sheet being stood on that's being pulled, and he's not standing on the bed sheet. It's really, really effective. And those simple techniques are difficult to master and come up with, because if you can do something simply, it can be super effective. You know what I mean?
and
Like
sometimes it only ends up being, a fraction of a second on film, and it might, in that fraction of a second, might take days or months to get right, but it's only a fraction of a second on film that can make the rest of it. We will buy 30 minutes of sitting around with nothing happening for something that goes like that that can make the entire movie. So if it's done right, yeah, it's magic. So I gotta see that one.
Yeah, no, highly recommend it. And the lead actress, she's in what's it called?
Handmaid's Tale,
Handmaid's
right?
Tale. Yeah, I remember her
I
from
forget her
West
name.
West Wing as Bartlett, the president's
Oh
daughter.
yeah, yeah.
That's the first thing I saw her, and she nails it. Her performance, fantastic.
Yeah, she's
And
great. I've seen her in a lot of stuff, and sadly, I'm getting old because I'm blanking on her name. But I just saw her in the movie Us with Jordan Peele's latest
I've not
offering,
seen that. I
Us.
really want to see that. Yeah.
I think Get Out is phenomenal. Us has some great moments. For whatever reason, I just don't think the story. I don't think it worked, but I also love it's a bold attempt at something, so I'll give kudos there. So yeah, but it's not as definitely not as wonderful as Get Out, that's for sure. But yeah, she's in that as well.
Oh, superb. Yeah. And kind of growing up, was horror on your radar? Did family kind of show you it? What was that? What were your kind of early
Well,
influences?
I was a big uh, chicken growing up. Like the first scary movie I ever saw that gave me nightmares for a week, and I was not allowed to watch horror anymore. Was Dracula starring Frank Langella, and it
Oh,
just
was
had
that
some really haunting.
76 or something?
I think
Maybe
so,
later
yeah.
than that. Yeah, something like that.
Showing my age, I think I saw it in the '80s, but that was terrifying. And then the
He's
second horror
tremendous.
movie.
Sorry to cut you off, but he's tremendous. He's the best thing in Masters of the Universe.
Oh, Skeletor,
I
yeah.
love him. I absolutely love him. Even in Cutthroat Island, I think he's
I'll
great.
have
I
to see
really
that
love
one,
him. Yeah.
which is another big bomb, which I haven't seen, but
It
I'm
has
sure.
a very small thing, just to take you away from that, is it has one of the best explosions ever, because there's a ship, it's not a spoiler, there's a ship
Oh
that
yeah,
explodes. But when you see the film and you see that, you'll recognize it straight away, because there's something so real about it. I don't know how they did it and how no one got injured, but it's an achievement. And Frank Langella's a very evil individual in that, and yeah, I just kind of
yeah,
lapped that up. So
yeah.
his Dracula was an early influence on you.
Yeah, and there was like some his vampire minions, these sexy girls, and they had glowing red eyes, and that more than anything stuck with me. And then the second thing, I never even saw the movie. The next door neighbor kid I grew up with told me about the movie The Exorcist that he saw. He just told me about it, and I was so terrified by his telling of the story that. And I think I was like 10 at the time. I had nightmares about it, and I never saw The Exorcist until I was 17. I saw all the other horror movies. I saw the Nightmare on Elm Streets. I saw the Friday the 13th, but I couldn't handle sitting down to watch The Exorcist until I was 16 or 17. And so to this day, that's a big influence. The Shining too, I saw when I was like, I think I saw it in 1983 on TV, and those twins scared the living bejesus out of me. So I didn't have a great relationship with horror. Like, it genuinely scared me, but I kept going back. Maybe it's just I don't know what kept. It's like I was so scared, it was so awful, but I needed to see more of it. So it's a very real relationship. It's not like I wasn't enjoying the gore, saying, "Oh, this is hilarious, ha ha ha." It's like I was scared shitless, but I had to watch it. But of course, the slasher movies for me were never scary. They're more comedies with a grisly sense of humor.
Yeah.
And between you and me, I like the fact that there was boobs in it, in most of them. So that got us in there,
Yeah, there's a
as I'm
scene.
sure it is for many
There's
of
a
us.
scene in Psycho. I think it's Psycho 2. It's either Psycho 2 or maybe
Mhm.
Psycho 4, and that's an early memory because of that very reason.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, my horror past started because I've got two older brothers, and my eldest brother, I thank him. I don't thank him enough for this, but he was the influence on my early viewing history in terms of horror, and he's the reason I had nightmares though as a child as well, because Kruger was the one for me that would really give me absolute nightmares. And
Oh really? Yeah.
I watched Prince of Darkness, the Christopher Lee
Uh-huh.
Hammer film, and
Hmm.
it was just something so sinister about the blood from the eyes, and
Oh.
yeah,
Oh,
child's
so
yeah.
the no, I haven't seen the Hammer film. I've only seen the John Carpenter one. I
Oh
didn't even
yeah,
know it was a Hammer film.
the Hammer film, Prince of Darkness. I think it's the first don't quote me on this, but I think it's the first Dracula film with Christopher Lee and
Oof.
Peter Cushing as. Don't think he plays Van Helsing, but it's another character. And I watched that when I was really young, and there was something really about the carriage going to the castle, the kind of classic. It's not the regular Bram Stoker story, but it's something so evil about it. And with
Yeah.
Kruger, because most of the early effects were all no CG, and this is something I really don't like in terms of CG, is that those real effects are, when they're done right and the lighting's right, they can look astounding. Like when Kruger comes through the wall, there's a kind of latex or whatever they use. And then they did the same scene in the remake that was a few years ago, and it's awful. It's all CG.
Yeah.
And it's just not scary anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's only one moment I think that I really got scared of was in the very first Nightmare on Elm Street, where she's standing in a body bag in the middle of the classroom. That one really chilled. The first one is actually quite scary, so I got to give props to the great Wes Craven for that. But I found the remaining ones to be just too jokey and too fun, which I still enjoyed on a certain level. But yeah.
Yeah, it went really schlocky, didn't it?
It did, but I guess as I get older, I kind of appreciate that too. I sort of I can enjoy a little bit of schlock, but sometimes, I don't know. It's like I say I like to be scared, but I watch the Conjuring movies, and I sit there to this day just gripping the chair that I'm sitting in, and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I putting myself through this kind of tension? And then when I get through it, there's an amazing feeling of relief and say, wow, that was awesome. But the actual watching, I don't even enjoy it. It's just too terrifying sometimes.
Yeah, it's what you mentioned about, I think it was the very beginning of what we're talking about with horror, and it was what can be hidden in the shadows and what can be in, doesn't have to be anything on screen, and can be terrifying. So when Vicky and I, my partner, when we watched Paranormal Activity kind of back to back, because I'm a really
hell yeah,
I dig them a lot. I think it was the first or second one we were watching, and I go to use the loo. I come back and she's standing in the corner like it's Blair Witch, and I
fuck off.
I screamed, "Fuck off! This is over! It's over! It's over!" And then I fucked off downstairs. I was so pissed off. And then, what do you mean it's over? She kept bringing, "Oh, what do you mean it's over? It's over." I said, "It's fucking over."
That's us.
And the thing is that I've got this original re-release Third Man poster that's framed, because I used to work in a cinema years ago, and it's propped up against the side of where we in like a little viewing room we had. And even though I'm looking away, I can still see the film in the reflection of the glass. And that's actually scarier. So yeah, don't do that. But yeah,
oh wow. So was she ribbing you? She did that on purpose to mess with you?
Oh, to stand in the corner, 100%.
Yeah.
But it was genius.
She's a keeper.
And
but I totally
twitching.
Agree with you on breaking up with her. I would. Oh my god. Yeah, I would totally break up with her.
We're
but she's also
we're engaged now as well, so it's different.
Well, I'm glad you got through that. But I totally either decision you would make. I would totally understand, like breaking it off completely over that, being scared that bad. But also kudos to your partner.
Well, the thing is, though, when I went into the room, she was immediately on my left, so I could see her in my peripheral vision. And she was doing the twitching thing, when the video is fast forwarded in Paranormal Activity, and she's twitching like that. She was doing that, and I was like,
"No, I would have broken up with her." So you're a stronger man than me. I would have been over. Absolutely. Oh my god.
I know. Or if I'd have walked in with like a bread knife and like I'd made a sandwich or something, there would have been a dangerous situation happening.
And you know what? Cops would have totally been like, you know what? I totally believe your story. I would have done the same thing. You would have got, no judge would have convicted you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no,
you're holding a bread knife. She was twitching in a corner. Yeah, I would have killed her too. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. I love it a bit for doing that. I really do. And it took a while for me to forgive her, but I do this thing where there's the back door, there's the side door, there's the front door here, and we've had a lot of work done in the house, and she'd be doing something simple like, I don't know, getting the bins ready to go out, and I'd arrive back from work because we both work. Well, she works for the NHS, the health service here, and I work at home at the moment. So she'd be getting the bins ready, and before COVID happened, I would walk into the house. I'd realize she hadn't heard me, and like Scooby Doo, I'd put my head to the side on the side of the wall, and I'd go up or down, and it looked like a floating head, and it fucking terrifies the shit out of her. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna keep going because you deserve it. You know what I mean? So
yeah. See, we love this stuff, but we're also big chickens because it gets, for some reason, this stuff gets to us. You know, there's something primordial that this touches, and it's compelling. So if we can create those moments for other people, you know, I don't know if I've done that in my films yet. I don't think there's anything in my first 2 episodes that's really a scare, but there's definitely a feeling of unsettled and creepiness and ominous. I think I successfully create.
Definitely the creepy, because if you'd have introduced more characters like in the house or your wife or whoever in it, the sense of isolation I think would have been lost in terms of the lead being on his own. And I think, was it Danielle that calls you? She's the
and she comes back in episode 2, and she's actually she's on camera. I do a Skype with her in episode 2. A little spoiler, right. But yeah, and she's I think it's hilarious that actually a bunch of the people you've interviewed in the past week are Toronto film people that I happen to know. I know Ian. I know Trish Rainone, who I'm partnering with on that feature film, by the way. She's one of the producers. Yeah. And she's a wonderful person. And Danielle, who I've been collaborating with and is one of my best, dearest friends. We've collaborated on so many things in the last 5 years, and just love working with her. Just a really sweet person.
I've realized there's such a rich source of actors, writers, producers, filmmakers in your part of the country or your part of the world. It's really, some of it's untapped, some of it's kind of, explodes into something huge. But yeah, there's a huge pool of talent where you are.
Well, glad to hear that. Yeah.
No, definitely. And it's really odd how different countries have picked up this our festival, because it's really small to begin with. We're going to hopefully do it next year, but it's going to take a slightly different shape because hopefully things are much better by then in terms of, being able to go out and we're not expand the idea, but kind of do something slightly different with it. We'll have the same kind of time periods. And we just received a film from Israel, and it's a really simple but well written piece. And I was just, this is fantastic. I don't know how, this is one of the reasons I wanted to interview you and a lot of the other filmmakers. How did you come across the festival? So how did you kind of hear about it initially?
Trish Rainone told me about it, and then I told Danielle, but she had already heard of it from someone else. But it was word of mouth for me because I made this film, because there's actually a local festival called also the same thing. It's called the Isolation Film Festival.
Is it Short Festival? Isolation Short Festival, I think.
I think so, yeah.
It's just for Canadian-based filmmakers or actors or something.
Yeah, I think it was only marketed maybe only to Canadians, and I think it's only So right, I think it's focused on Toronto. So as far as I know, might only be Torontonians or Ontarians. I don't know, but that's the one that I created this for. And then I heard about your festival, so I submitted that into a few other ones, and thrilled to be part of your festival and getting to talk to you. But yeah, so quite a few of the people who created the thing for that festival, since we had something that was also because this one is for 3 minutes. I made a 5-minute one because I felt the story works for 5 minutes, and then I shortened it to 3 for this festival. But I'll say, I'd be curious. I'll send you. Obviously, you can't share them, but I'd love to share with you personally the first 2 episodes. So just to keep you in the loop with what I'm doing.
Yeah, I said to Ian that he's done a horror series, and I'm more than happy to kind of. I think what you touched upon in terms of asking filmmakers or horror filmmakers for 30 seconds of their film or even their whole film, and doing the review show based on like-minded people in terms of the kind of thing they like to make, and interview them again about their production, that kind of thing. So I think you've kind of helped me figure out the right approach, because that's what we wanted to do with this. We weren't looking for budgets in any way, and obviously people are kind of stuck at home, and we were looking for from 10-year-olds to people that had loads of experience, like, you know, Ian's got a lot of production and filming experience, and we wanted a real scope, and we have that. We've got diary entries from someone that's just moved from Boston to North Carolina. We've got animations from another 10-year-old based in the UK. We've got an actress called Tegan. She's 10 years old. She's based in Canada.
Wow.
She's going to submit her film soon. Her dad's shooting day for night and all of this. I was going, wow, it's fantastic. So I think
That's
giving
great.
that voice, and that's the in, and you've kind of helped me figure that out. So I'll make sure you get the credit for that when it starts.
Well, just have me on time and again to
No,
promote
absolutely.
my work.
Yeah.
And
We'll talk about your episodes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think you're going to find an endless supply of material to talk about, because there's so many young upstart filmmakers making horror who would love their stuff to be seen. And if you can provide a platform, I think it could be a great thing. So
did I tell you about the artist that made that are making the posters? Have I mentioned that at all?
I don't think so. No.
You might be interested in this. That we might have made a rod for our own back, but we're obviously there's no kind of prizes or anything like that. But we're making a one-off poster that includes an element of every single film on the poster. So, like
cool.
Empire Strikes Back has elements of everything, like a typical Spielberg poster from the 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, obviously yours will be included in that as well. So there's like a talking dog. I think it's going to be Danielle's bike that'll feature, that kind of thing. So it'll be like a Where's Waldo, Where's Wally mix. So we've got an
wonderful.
artist, a really talented fine art artist producing that for us. And he's putting a few test posters together. And then we've got another artist that she's doing the individual posters for every single film. So she's got the same brief of take an element from the films and then create a single one. So we want a really nice platform online to showcase everyone's work, because everyone's worked so hard to produce these. We want to showcase them properly. We don't just want to like put them on YouTube. That's it. We want to maybe get an introduction from everyone, if possible, to accompany the film, and then the poster on there as well. So, and the third one is we've had an artist, a super talented 18-year-old student from Italy, and he's produced the new podcast artwork, and it's like In the Mouth of Madness, but with me. And all these different bits, and I'm so happy with that. I'm like, well, they've produced this for nothing. They've put the time and effort into it, and what I'll do is after this, I'll email you the black and white version without any of the color, because they've not sent the final version of that. So what we're doing is we're printing the individual poster and the festival poster. We're sending that out to everyone that submitted a film. So we'll send one to you. We'll send you your film poster and the festival poster as well. So it's like a one-off, unique, like, thank you. This is what we've kind of made for you, you know.
Well, thank you. That's awesome.
So we want to try and get like little reaction, a very YouTube thing. We want to get reactions of people seeing their film, you know, their elements of their films on the poster, if they can spot them as well.
Cool. Yeah, definitely take part in that. So
yeah, I think yours might be like a torn, like 30 pages, like the torn version from the fire pit. I think the fire pit might feature. Yeah. So I really appreciate you coming on, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been great.
And we'll definitely collaborate, or at least chat on a podcast in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. I'd love to come on this show and talk with you anytime. Seems like we've got a lot in common creatively. So I'm very, very excited about this festival. Looking forward to being part of it. And let's stay in touch and keep talking.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you very much, Mark. And I'd like to thank everyone that's watching. And yeah, I'll send you that test artwork we received and see what you think. And I basically, my little brief was I sent them everything about me. I sent them pictures of me just to kind of have an outline drawing, and then I said, think horror, think John Carpenter, think Salvador Dali, and then have at it. And they've produced something I'm so proud of it. I didn't even create it, but I'm like going to use it for the festival, and then I'm going to use it for the podcast as well.
Wow, that sounds phenomenal. So yeah.
Well, have a good
look
day,
forward
mate.
to seeing that, Alex. Yeah, you
Enjoy
too,
the rest
man.
of your day, mate. Take it easy. I'll see you soon.
Will do. Cheers.
Bye-bye.